I've spent most of last month then working on blocks. First of all, the hardware and getting all of that wired in and working, and then the configuration of the blocks on the JMRI side, and then kind of realizing I'd done it all wrong and going back and doing it all again. But hopefully now all the block side of things is configured and I'm ready to move on to the next step of automation, which is sections and transits really. Sections kind of contain more information about blocks and principally give JMR information about what direction trains travel in through blocks and how they're connected and what their potential paths through different blocks are. And then transits brings all of that together in the sense that a transit is then a route. A transit, it contains the definition of a train moving from one part of the layout to another and gives rough indication of the path that that train will take. Sections first then. I've got some sections here and I've really not applied too much thought to this so far because it doesn't seem to need much thought. I've simply created one section for every block that I have. So I have a section for each block and each section contains one block and that one block is the block that section represents. So in this case I've got lower deck anti-clockwise PC end block, which is lower deck anti-clockwise PC end, so it's travelling down here, so it's about this bit of track to this bit of track. And if I go into that section, it's simply got the block anti-clockwise PC end in it, and then I've informed JMRI on the direction of travel through that section. So what JMRI is asking me here, JMRI populates these lines and kind of asks me to set what the direction is. So in this case it said if a train is entering my anti-clockwise PC end block from the anti-clockwise junction PC end block, which is this bit of track here, and it's travelling in a direction west, what direction is that travelling in terms of train direction? And for me on that loop, travelling this direction means it's going anti-clockwise, so it's going forward. And the only other block that's connected to this one, because it finishes about here, is this one here, because that's what this set of points belongs to, which is the anti-clockwise yard bypass PC end block, which is this one down here. And if a train comes through that travelling north, because by this point it's going up, it is travelling in a reverse direction because it's going clockwise on an anti-clockwise route. Now I've got all my sections configured, then I'm going to create a transit. A transit is a route around the layout. It can be as long or as short as I want it to be. So I'm going to create one that starts in this storage line here, because most of my trains start at the front of these storage lines. So I'm going to start at the front of this storage line here. I'm going to set a route that goes out through the yard exit, does a couple of laps of the anti-clockwise line, then comes across this junction here onto the incline loop, does a couple of laps of the incline loop, then comes back down across this junction, a couple more laps of the anti-clockwise route, and then in through the yard and park back here where it started. So I'm going to need to go and find my list of transits. I'm going to add a new one and I'm going to call it incline. Let's call it AC line 1 incline laps. And first thing I need to do is select where I want the transit, the journey to start. And I want it to start right at the front of the first line, so I'm going to select that one and I'm going to add that section. I get an opportunity here to add actions as part of that section as well, so I'm going to just add one here as an example. And I can do things here like, say, when the train starts I can turn its light on. So let's set that, create that, done, and so it's going to turn its light on when it starts if it's got one. Next, I get to choose the next section in my block, so it knows where I've started, and now it's saying, well, where do you want to go next? And it limits my choice of where I could go next by what's physically connected to the section that I've started in. So I can only either go backwards down this storage line here or forwards through that yard exit. So I'm going to go for forwards through the yard exit. at that section, and it continually just keeps restricting me to what I can choose. So that's got me around this corner and up to here now, but here I do have a choice because I'm onto a section that has a turnout in it, a set of points. So it gives me a choice of two blocks here or two sections here, because it's saying you can either go straight on down here or you can go through this turnout and end up here. This time round I'm going to stay on the anti-clockwise line, so we'll go for that one and we'll carry on going through the again, we've got a choice here because we're down here now, so it's giving us a choice of coming back in the yard, but we don't want to go in there yet. So I'm going to stick to the loop. I'm going to come round again, but this time when we get up here, I am going to get up onto the incline line, which means I need to take two steps. The first step I need to take is to get me here, which is this one, and then I need to take, and then once it's got me here, it's giving me the choice again of either going straight on down this line, but that's kind of the wrong way down that line, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to head up through this turnout here, this junction here, and onto the incline line, which is here. Again, once I'm up here, it's giving me the choice to come straight back down again, but I'm going to carry on into the incline. My choices are much limited now because I'm just on a straight, well, not straight, but a piece of track that's got no junctions on it. So back down to the bottom, and it's giving me the choice now to come off, but let's do one more lap and head around there. But this time we will come off, which will bring us down to this point here. And so once we get to that point there, again we get two choices. We either carry on down this line going in the wrong direction, or we come back down here onto the line we want to be on. So we'll do that, which is the anti-clockwise bit, and then let's go do another lap around here. We'll avoid the yard entry this time round, come back around again, avoid going up towards the incline this time, and this time round we'll go into the yard. We will head into line one. At this point we've just come, sort of we're on the brink of coming into the yard here, so it's giving us a choice here of which storage line we go into, but I want to go into the first one. I want to go back to where I started from, so down to A, which is the first one, and that's where we'll finish, and I'll mark that safe just as a more of an indicator to JMRI that I want the thing to stop there. Another good idea at this point as well, I'm going to add another action just as it starts to get into the yard, and I'm going to tell it, I wish it would these things on the same screen. I'm going to tell it to slow down because it's getting into the yard, and I don't want it going full pelt down that storage line, or it'll never stop in time. So I'm going to ask it to ramp, on block entry, I'm going to ask it to ramp its speed, and I'm going to ask it to reduce it to 15% so that it's going at a reasonable speed to get it stopped on its stop sensor. And that's my journey created. That's my transit created then, which tells JMRI the path, or roughly the path, that a train should take around the layout, but it doesn't set the properties such as which train, what speed, and that kind of thing. And those settings are done through creating a dispatch. Okay then, so I've set a transit called, that's the one, AC line 1 incline laps. Set the APT on it. It's in the selected transit because it's right at the front of the parking line, which is block 1 in line 1, and it'll finish on the last block. We're going to allocate 3 sections ahead. We're going to terminate when done, but we're not going to run another one, and we're going to run the train automatically and set it at, I think 40 is the most I dare set it at. It does all have resistive wheel sets. We'll have a medium, it's pretty reliable, so let's try a medium. Let's go medium fast. I think that's still pretty decent ramp rate, and I'm going to save it so I don't have to keep setting all those things. Let's call it APT incline. Already was one, and let's go. Good start then, here it comes. See, even with those 6 blocks, there is still a lot of occupied blocks. In fact, all of them now on this loop, even still. I guess with a long train, it's spending most of its time taking up 2 blocks. Right, so it's set those 2 turnouts over here, and then corrected one as well that was set from the last transit. So it hasn't slowed down much for these, but it tends to be okay over these points. That'll do. So we're now onto the incline. Again, it's setting all blocks across the incline, and having allocated that block at the top now, it's set the crossover points back to closed so that it can get across, because it's set to do 2 laps, I think, of the incline. Comes around the back. Again, now up here we see the allocation again. It's going to be coming from the right, so these 2 crossovers have been set so that it can get back onto the inside line. Interestingly, it hasn't set that one back to closed simply because it doesn't need to. Hasn't been part of the transit since the train came this way and went up there. So whereas I'd naturally set that back, and it looks wrong to me when it's left open because it's not in a transit, the layout doesn't care. Crossover safely navigated. And again, up at the top, it's working its way around. It's just allocated that block, so it's straightened that turnout out. But again, now this one has been straightened out, the one that was left open before, because it's now needed. It's straightened that one out as well, but it's left that one because it's not on the current transit. And this time, this turnout down here has been set because it's due to go into the yard this time. And it'll hopefully slow down a bit, because that seems to be running pretty fast. It's running out of time to slow down. It's not going to slow down. So it hasn't appeared slow down messages on that last bit. Maybe it's missed a sensor, but obviously at that speed, by the time it's stopped, it has overshot its parking space by some way and blocked everything else. So this time I have 2 automated trains, and one is going to want to cross the other one. So let's see what happens. It's now setting turnouts, I think, up here because it's allocated them. there we go, they've started being allocated. And I think, if we're lucky, the class 101 is going to be affected, whereas it's coming around here now. So we have turnout set that the 101 can't cross. So what is the 101 going to do? Oh. This time those turnouts were allocated more quickly because there was something waiting for them. There was another transit that wanted them, and now that 101 is going to nicely pull away. APT's on its way now. It's going to stay on the incline this lap and come down from it the next lap. So we'll keep an eye on the allocations again. I can hear some turnouts being set again. Right, so it's almost immediately when it's got on, it's allocated that first turnout for the APT to get back down. And actually, this time, the 101 has stopped much earlier than it did last time. I guess because it had more warning. Looking on the screen here, where is it? It's on, yeah, it's sat across, it's actually sat right across those two blocks there. There's one finishes about there and one starts about there, and so it's sat, it knows it's got an allocated block here, but that allocated block has an issue in it. But then, strangely, looking here, this turnout should have been set for the APT and it wasn't, so the APT has now stopped. But this is going to get messy because, oh, brilliant. I've spent quite a while unpicking what happened there then and trying to work out what circumstances would lead to JMRI causing a head-on collision between two trains. It really helps that I got these cameras set up and I was recording it with this overlay of the panel, so I could go back through it and look at it. I'd also got debug logging in JMRI, so it was logging what it was doing with the auto trains. And having unpicked it, I think I've learned some important lessons, so I'm going to try and go through and explain what happened. So this is just as the 101 is resuming, having let the APT onto the loop. It stopped about here to let it on the loop, and then they're off going. They're booking sections about 3 sections ahead of where they already are, so I'm just going to pause this here. So the APT is on this outer incline loop, and it doesn't have many sections on here, so its back end is just still in this section here, although it's about to clear it, and the rest of the train is in this section here, which ends here. It's booking sections 3 ahead of where it already is, so this is 1 here, this is the second one here, and it can't book the third one because it's occupying it, and it won't book that one until the back end has cleared it, which is about to happen. The 101 is working around, there are more sections on this loop here, so it's got a little bit more room to play. It's currently just there, which is here. It's going to enter this section here, and when it enters this one, it's going to book the end one here because it's the next one in line. So let's just let all that happen. This loop here should go red any second as it goes in. There it goes. So it's now booked this section here. APT is coming round. I'm just going to let the 101 get a little bit further because this is kind of a key moment. Let's let it go a bit further than that. There we go. So 101 has just come around here, so it's kind of getting to about this point here, and it's going to cross into this section here, which will cause JMRI to allocate the next section in its transit, which is here. APT is still making its way around, but this is its last lap. Next time it comes to this point, it's going to want to be off down here because that's what its transit's saying it wants to do, and it's going to be wanting to be back onto this inside line across the clockwise line here that the 101 is making its way around. So I'm going to let it go again. It's now moved into this section here, so it's booked this section now. This section of this middle line, which is this bit up to about there on this line, is booked to the 101. APT is moving its way around, and when it moves it, in fact it's already booked this line down here. So let's stop this again. This line we saw got booked by the 101, but now, which is this line going up here, but this line has been booked by the APT with the intention of coming across these two turnouts here. In fact, this turnout has already been set because it's this turnout here and it's on this line, so it's been set. Problem is, of course, these turnouts are paired within JMRI. You can't turn one without turning the other because they're a crossover. So whenever one gets turned, it's a natural assumption, and it's configured that way to turn the other one as well. So this has been set incorrectly for this allocated section, and is now a danger to this train here. So what happens is the 101 realises as soon as it crosses into this section here that there's danger ahead, and it stops. This is its next section, and that's important to know as well, or to remember. APT meanwhile is coming around, and it's JMRI is going to make a decision on its behalf, again based on the available information that I've given it, which is a terrible decision. And if I just stop here, I'll explain what that is. So at the minute I don't have stopping sensors set up, and when I do this kind of problem, this particular problem will be alleviated, but at this point I didn't have stopping sensors. So JMRI has got this line booked for this train, for the APT, this one down here, but it doesn't have this line booked for it because this train has that line booked. So even though this turnout's open, JMRI knows that this train can't enter this block because it's allocated to this train, and even though this train's stopped, it's never going to give that block up. JMRI is now making a decision. It's saying, okay, I know that I need to stop the APT. It already knows it needs to stop the APT because it doesn't have an allocation ahead of it. But it knows that this next block is safe because it's already allocated to the APT. So what it's saying is, right, how long is this block, the next one that the APT is going to move into? And I've got the block length set because it's quite a long block. It goes from there to there. I've got that value set in against the block in JMRI. So JMRI say, right, that's a long block. It's longer than the train. I can stop the train safely in that block. So what it does under those circumstances, it lets the train enter the block, and as soon as the back of the train clears the previous block, it stops within that section. The problem, of course, is this block isn't that long now because this turnout's set. It's not from there to there anymore. It's effectively from there to there because we don't want it to move over here into a section that is not allocated to this train. But JMRI doesn't know that. So what JMRI says, right, this block's long enough, I'm going to go in, and as soon as this block here is cleared, I'm going to stop the train, which is exactly what it does. There it goes. So it's done exactly what it meant to do. As soon as that block's cleared, it's now in this section and it's stopped the train. But it hasn't taken into account that it's now occupying another section. But that section has gone to occupied here, and JMRI has assumed that this train must have occupied it. And seeing as this train had it allocated and has now occupied it, I'm assuming, and this is the assumption I've made, it's saying, all right, that's okay then. It must be okay to resume this train then because it's already in that block. So, of course, it resumes that train. Off it goes into a block that JMRI thinks is already allocated and already occupied by that train, whereas it thinks this train is still sat down here somewhere being safe. It just doesn't know that that train's there, and bang. So, lessons learned. First of all, I think that stopping sensors will certainly help the situation because I can be more precise about where trains stop. And in the example of this APT, I think I'd probably have it stop up here somewhere, and then in the end have a nice little signal there as well that tells it to stop. So that just keeps it well and truly out of the way. And maybe just in case it does end up entering this section here, have a stopping sensor around here somewhere just before the turnouts start, so that again it's going to stop before it's blocking anything. But the big lesson I learned, and I'm just going to take this back a bit to clear this track, is for this layout, this junction here is the most complex piece of track that I have, really, that the layout has. And up to this point, I've kind of been, so transits are made of sections, and sections contain blocks. And up to this point, really, the way I've set my sections up were on a one-to-one basis, so one section for every block, and then just build transits, build routes based on block to block to block to block. And that's what happened here. So this section here contains this block, this section here is a block, this section here is a block. But that's just asking for trouble, for precisely the reason that these two trains demonstrated, in that if a train is approaching a relatively complex junction, especially one where it needs to interact possibly and cooperate with a train coming in the opposite direction on part of its route, then it can't be booking this transit, this particular path, in bits and pieces. It has to book the entire thing in one go and say, right, I'm coming across you and I'm keeping all of this booked until I've been across you, and then you can start again. And the way to do that, of course, is sections can contain more than one block, and a block can belong to more than one section. So I've created a section called incline to lower deck anti-clockwise, which contains this block here, and it contains this block here. It then contains this near side block here on the clockwise line that starts, I think, on the fish plate on the frog there. So it's booked this line here as well down to here, the one that's currently booked. I think it's about there, and it's booked, and it contains this block here that goes, the anti-clockwise one that goes down to about there. So that section now is the path in the transit between it coming around that corner and it heading off down here, which means when it's coming around on its big loop here, and it gets to the point where it wants to book this bit here, because this bit here is a section that contains this block and this block as well, it's going to book the entire path in one go, which will prevent this 101 from accidentally allocating itself something that's halfway between the path that this APT wants to take. Of course, because a block can belong to more than one section, there is still a section that represents just this block, so it can still operate in exactly the same way as it did before. But my sections, and I've got two, one for each way, I've got one section now that's called incline to lower deck anti-clockwise, and I've got one that's called lower deck anti-clockwise to incline, so that's kind of this path here that goes in the opposite direction. And I can just use those sections when, as part of my transit, I want one of these anti-clockwise trains to cross this middle line and go up there. The benefit, of course, being that it books the entire path, this entire path, in one go, and therefore stops that confusion of these paired points being attempted to set in opposite statuses and everything else. Just a very quick word on sections then, and how I've done this. There's some kind of anti-clockwise and clockwise stuff here which I'm going to ignore for now, but take this section incline bottom anti-clockwise. This is the section that if a train is travelling along the incline loop round and round and round, this is the section it'll take, because it starts here and it finishes there, and it'll just go through. Now, the way I had it set up, and part of the reason why that collision happened, is I'd have to use this as well if the train was coming down. So when this got to the third section it was going to book, it would just book this line, and it wouldn't book this one, and it wouldn't book that one, and that was the problem, because they ended up all mixed up and they crashed into each other. So what I did is I created this, is it incline to There we go. Incline to lower deck anti-clockwise. And what this has is it has 3 blocks in it. So it's a section, it's a single section, and it will be allocated as a single section when it's the next section in a transit to be allocated. But when it is allocated, it will book these 3 blocks at the same time, and those 3 blocks are incline bottom, so that's this bit along here. Clockwise lower junction PC end, there's a PC over here, so that's why it's called PC end. So that's, I think, this section of track here, and then it will also book anti-clockwise lower junction PC end, which is this section of track here. So soon when this train is coming around and it gets to wherever point it wants to head off the incline, and it gets to the point where it's going to book this section, the second this section gets booked, this bit and this bit all get allocated to it, which means that the train coming around here knows it can't allocate any of this, and it will sit and wait until that's all cleared, and it will continue its journey. Once I got those sections sorted out, then I did remove one of the risks of collision, but I didn't remove them all, as I found out the hard way. Unfortunately, I didn't get this one recorded, but I'm going to explain it anyway. And this one comes down to resistive wheel sets. Now, I'd sort of half taken notice of resistive wheel sets, but not so much. But I started to realise that I needed them because, and this is a good set of points to use as an example. This set of points is the exit from the yard. So say take, as an easy example, take that exec class 43, the one that's nearest here. Say that's going out onto the layout. It has a motor car at both ends. So I thought, well, I don't need resistive wheel sets on that, because the idea of a resistive wheel set is to make sure that the end of the train, or one of the reasons for them, is to make sure that the end of the train also keeps a block activated, because these trains are so long. If that one leaves a block and the block goes unoccupied, you've got all those coaches still in there, and the block would go unoccupied and you could have a collision. So in this example, I thought, well, it's fine because it's got a motor car on the end which will keep the thing occupied. And the general idea of that is, say this class 43 comes out along here, it goes out onto the main loop there. Now, it could be allocating sections so far ahead on this loop that it's going to go all the way round, and this section on its return, because it's a circle coming from here, this turnout's going to have to be changed because it's set to open to get the train out, and it needs to be set to close to get the train past when it comes back down here. But the end of the block is here. So if a train that doesn't have a resistive wheel set on the end comes out of a block here, and then there's all these carriages coming through that the layout doesn't know about because they're not drawing current, then this turnout could get set to straight on while there are still coaches coming out, because it's preparing for the train to come back down on its first lap of the loop. But of course, having that power car on the very end resolves that, because the block stays occupied until the end of the train has passed, and therefore it waits till the train has gone for the set of points to be changed. However, there are circumstances where having resistive wheel sets or a power drawing car on the end of a train is nowhere near enough. And that brings us straight back to this junction again. So I've been through it a few times already, what these sections are, but this middle line here, just for clarity, it's a section that starts with the end of that set of points there. There's an insulating rail joiner, heads all the way down there and to about halfway, just after the corner, so about halfway down that middle coach of the class 148. And that's the length of that block. However, if I've got a train that's coming down this incline, wanting to go onto the inner anti-clockwise loop here, and I've got a whatever it is sat waiting to continue its journey. It's sat politely waiting for this train to come across those sets of points, across that bit of line and down there, and this is sat politely waiting for that to happen. JMRI is aware that there's something waiting, so as soon as the path ahead of this train becomes unoccupied, this set of points and this set of points are going to be changed to straight on so that the train can get through and it'll start the train and head off. Now take that class 43 that's over there. That's my longest train, and it's got current drawing car at the front and it's got a current drawing car at the back. So I thought, fine, that's enough. But the problem comes when you're crossing other blocks and not going into them at the what you might call traditional start and end. So say we've got this train sat waiting for the class 43. Imagine the 43 is up the hill. It's making its way down and it comes across and then it hits this turnout. When it crosses this turnout and it gets to this point, it's now entering this block here on this line. And it goes down there, and when it gets to that point, it activates this block and it exits this block. So even though this block goes from all the way over there to all the way over there, it has different entry and exit points. And if you take that class 43 for example, the only active part of this section is from there to there, which is much shorter than 7 Mark III coaches. So what I was getting, of course, was the class 43 is coming down here, the power car is activating this block here as it should, it's heading off there, but as soon as it gets across that set of points onto there, you've got 1 Mark III coach here, 2 Mark III coach here, 3 Mark III coach here, and the thing that's got the lights in it that's drawing current is still halfway up the hill. So suddenly this block is now unoccupied because there's nothing drawing power on it. It's just got a couple of Mark III coaches. These sets of points get changed. This thing sets off, and well, yeah, I wish I'd filmed what happened next. So needless to say, I have been hammering the super glue resistors and electric paint, and there are now resistive wheels about every 2 coaches. There may be 1 there, so there are a couple of coaches there that don't have them. There's 1 there, a couple more coaches and maybe 1 there, and then you've got a couple to that one which has got lights on it and draws power anyway. So I've after really thinking that to be honest, initially I thought that resistive wheel sets were just to make things look pretty and you could put delays on blocks and it would have the same effect, and that's absolutely not true. You need to make sure that when a train is occupying a block, that block knows it's being occupied. Time to give all that a test then and see if it's made any difference. I'm not expecting this to run perfectly. I'm still having trains stop when I don't want them to stop, not restart when I want them to restart, and I'm still working through all those. So at the moment all I'm really focusing on is the avoiding collisions aspect of it. There are a few changes that I've made of late. I now have signal mass logic all around the layout, so it has these lights. I haven't actually got the physical lights in yet, but there are icons that represent where signals are and roughly where trains should stop if the signals go to red. I've got a temporary test forward stopping sensor for this section here that's held in place by a chock block and an old train, just to see if I can influence the behaviour of stopping, because that's not working particularly well at the moment either. So the idea here is just to get 2 trains running. I think it'll be a class 101 on the outside clockwise line, and that'll just be heading around doing laps. There'll be a class 43 on the inside line, and the real kind of crunch points will come down here again, where when the class 43 wants to cross from the line it's on, which is the right hand one as we look at it, onto the left hand one, the far left, the class 101 needs to respect that and not drive into it. Then the 43 will do a couple of laps at the top, it'll come back down again and it will cross over here onto here, and again the 101 needs to not take it out. class 43 then's got at least one more lap to go before it tries to cross over, and it's obvious there as well that the 101 has that line booked as well, so I think the next lap around will be the interesting one. .101 just making its way around now, and it's about to cross the 43. I'm hoping the 101 is not going to be so slow that by the time it's across, it's not going to get inconvenienced by the 43, but let's see. So the 43, in fact no, it looks like the 43 is going to do another lap anyway before it heads up, so it might time itself quite well. I'm assuming the 43 will want to cross next time it comes along. It did, and those points are both set now. We still have a kind of, this is interesting because we still have an allocation point here where these two are going to meet, so I'm assuming the 101 doesn't have that much of this allocation booked. Few. So that's now stopped because the class 43 is heading across here, and it's slowed down nicely as well. It's supposed to do that, it doesn't always do it, but it's slowed down nicely here to cross onto the incline. And what I'm hoping, as it heads up and clears this section, that sounds good. Those turnouts have been cleared and the 101 is moving, so far so good. So I think at this point there'll be a bit of a status quo for a while because they're both going to stay on the same lines, but the 43 is only going to do a couple of laps. In fact, it might be this one after it clears this time. Let's have a look. So it's got its allocations all the way around there, so we'll know this time when this line clears and gets allocated for the next lap. Yep, they both got turned, I think. It takes a while for the feedback to reach the display, but they're now both set for the 43 to come back, and I'm hoping that the 101 is going to wait this time, although it's, yeah, it's on its way. This is good timing. So is the 101 this time going to, alright, that's a good sign. So it's already stopped. So we'll now let the 43 slowed down as well, which is a good sign, I think. .43 is heading back onto the anti-clockwise line while the 101 waits. 43 speeding up, so once it's cleared these sections, it looks like I need more resistive wheel sets because I'm sure that middle line cleared earlier than it was supposed to, but that's done what it was supposed to do. All we need now is the 101 to move. And I think that might be success. I'm going to stick with it then and see how well they do at parking themselves, because at some point they're going to want to stop. The 43's probably got another 2 laps or so left, I should think, before it's ready to park, and the 101 can't be that far away from finishing either, because I get pretty bored of adding all those laps to the transits. So I'll keep an eye on the panel and see if any points get set. Right, something's gone. I can't work out, what that was. Right, that was for the 43, and I think it took so long for the feedback to come back, because I was watching that and I think I was pointing the camera at it as well, and it's this turnout, and it took so long for the feedback to come back, because I heard the turnout go, and I looked at the panel and I couldn't see. I sort of looked for this one, this one, this one and this one, and I couldn't see which one had gone, and it took so long for the feedback to come back and for this to go to thrown. You can see this light now has gone red. So I'm guessing this 43 is in a bit of stalemate now, and it's just going to stay parked there, and I'm going to have to fix it. That's kind of a role reversal. The layout used to park trains for me, and now I have to park trains for the layout. Right, I've just heard another one go. So again, I heard it go. Look how long it takes between the instruction for that turnout to go, because I heard it go behind me. Hopefully the microphone picked it up, but the amount of time, and that's affecting because the signals are going based on the state of these turnouts. So it's taking so long for the state to match what the instructions are that they're sending danger signals out. And yeah, I need to do something about that. But anyway, it looks to me like we do have a Class 101 heading down. And if it stops where it's supposed to, I'd call that moderate success. Oh, it stopped early, but that's not bad. Well, I think that did a good job of demonstrating that although I might be making progress and understanding this more, and maybe I'm getting some of the bigger issues out of the way, there are still a load of niggles that will affect the precision and the accuracy of what the layout's trying to do. There is too much of a delay now on those turnouts, on the feedback, and I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'm going to have to look into it. I do think there is an emerging performance issue here, in that I can have a transit, and if there's just one train on the track, that transit is pretty much obeyed, and all of the events, all the changes of speed, adding lights and everything, they happen when they're supposed to happen. But if there are 2 trains running on the track, 2 auto trains, then all of those events seem delayed. They seem to slow down after they're supposed to slow down. They seem to stop after they're supposed to stop. And obviously turnout feedback is crazily slow when it needs to be accurate, because the same section that's being allocated is the one that's being monitored by the signal masts. I think all of this has been mind-bending and way long enough already, so I'll stop here, but I very obviously have a lot more work to do.